Well, welcome to the 700 Club. With the former president charged with multiple crimes and the current president's son also under indictment, Attorney General Merrick Garland faced the House Judiciary Committee with a host of questions to answer.
Republicans grilled Garland on claims of bias at the Department of Justice. In turn, the Attorney General doubled down. CBN's Hillary Powell reports from Capitol Hill on the face-off.
There are a lot of spicy back and forths and clapbacks between Attorney General Merrick Garland and also the Judiciary Committee. This is a routine committee, but we're seeing the Attorney General face to face with some of his most ardent critics. Republicans are using this as an opportunity to really grill the Attorney General on whether there's fairness or bias in the Justice Department under President Joe Biden.
In a high-stakes hearing before the House Judiciary Committee, Republican lawmakers questioned Attorney General Merrick Garland's pledge to remain above politics. Garland was on the defensive.
Our job is not to take orders from the president, from Congress, or from anyone else about who or what to criminally investigate. As the president himself has said, and I reaffirm today, I am not the president's lawyer.
Garland was grilled about his department's handling of probes and prosecutions of former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, on felony gun charges. Special counsel David Weiss leads that investigation.
He picks the one guy he knows will protect Joe Biden.
Democrats on the committee defend the DOJ, noting Donald Trump nominated U.S. Attorney David Weiss.
Your decision was to leave the Trump-appointed attorney completely in charge of this, hands off from you. He makes all the calls without interference from the Attorney General. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The president's son was indicted last week on 3 felony federal gun charges, accused of lying about his drug abuse to buy a handgun in 2018, but questions centered on possible preferential treatment.
They see the DOJ, of course, aggressively prosecuting President Biden's chief political rival, Mr. Trump, while at the same time, they see slow walking and special treatment given to the president's son.
This month, an Associated Press Nork Center poll found just 19% of Americans are very or extremely confident the Justice Department is handling its investigation in a fair and nonpartisan way. Half say they are not too confident or not at all confident. Regent University Robertson School of Government Dean Michelle Bachman says the FBI should be free from political interference from both sides of the aisle.
They're eager to prosecute those who have political opposition to the current administration. They seem highly reluctant to prosecute anyone who's associated with the current administration. That is a denial of justice.
In this hearing, we also saw Attorney General Garland being questioned about possible anti-Catholic bias under the Justice Department, under his purview, to which he really forcefully responded. This was brought by Republican Representative Jefferson Van Drew, a question of a series of incidents where he alleges there was anti-Catholic, also anti-Christian bias, including a memo from the FBI about possible FBI agents sent into Catholic churches. Garland said he was appalled by any FBI memo mention of this, and he used his time at the mic to really say that people who practice their faith are not extremists. On Capitol Hill, Hillary Powell, CBN News.
Well, this was supposed to be an ordinary oversight meeting, and it turned into a grilling, and a grilling particularly for political bias. The reason is that I think we've all got to recognize what happened in the first 2 years of the Trump administration, that there were absolutely created charges, that somehow or other there was collusion with the Russian government, all based on the Steele dossier. The FBI should have known, if they did not actually know, that that was a made-up report. And to take an administration through that is just unimaginable, but that's what they did. And in that, you have FBI agents admitting that they tried perjury traps for members of the president's advisors. This is unbelievable to me. And what it does, it destroys confidence in the FBI. It destroys confidence in the judicial system. When you think your vote has been taken away, that you voted for a particular candidate for an election, and then somehow the government machinery tries to hobble their administration for 2 long years. It was an absolute nightmare. Then it turned into all these impeachments in the House of Representatives, all of this stuff. When you feel disenfranchised, then the social contract is broken. That's what I don't understand the end game here for the FBI or the Justice Department, because when you destroy confidence in the judicial system, you have lost something fundamental to our democracy, to our democratic republic. When 50% of Americans say they don't trust the current judicial system, that should be something to wake us all up. Because without that kind of trust, we don't have a republic. And how do you even trust the voting system? How do you trust anything anymore? And have you broken the social contract with the American people? In all of this, it's amazing to me that we don't see any justice, if you will, for the FBI agents who did that, or for IRS agents that slow-walked Tea Party. I'm going all the way back to 2012, but there was nothing that ever happened to them. When is government going to be held accountable for what they do to interfere with the right of people to participate in the political process, and then when they win elections, to actually have that election count? In other news, President Biden sat down with Benjamin Netanyahu for the first time since the Israeli prime minister won the election last year. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That is right, Gordon, and that long-awaited meeting was seen as a bit of a snub for not being held at the White House. The face-to-face on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly comes after months of distancing from the White House over concerns of a judicial overhaul in Israel and Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank. The two discussed the threat to Israel from Iran and a potential Israel-Saudi normalization deal.
If you and I, 10 years ago, were talking about normalization with Saudi Arabia, and I think we'd look at each other like, who's been drinking what? But we're good Irish whiskey. Even where we have some differences, my commitment to Israel, as you know, is ironclad. I think without Israel, there's not a Jew in the world that's secure.
President Biden also expressed hope that the two can meet in Washington before the end of the year. Well, on Capitol Hill, House Republican leaders are still working to avoid a government shutdown beginning August 1st. Speaker Kevin McCarthy Wednesday night presented a new proposal for a 30-day funding bill to keep the government open. It's reportedly getting support from Republican holdouts. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Capitol Hill today seeking more support for his country's defense against Russia's invasion. There is growing opposition to hear his requests, though. More than 24 Republican lawmakers are sending a letter to the White House stating their intention to oppose any more aid to Ukraine. Well, President Biden is taking action to address the migrant crisis by granting temporary legal status to nearly 500,000 Venezuelans who arrived in the country by July 31st. That will make it easier for them to find work here in the United States. It is a key demand of local and state officials struggling to deal with a growing number of migrants in their cities. The administration is also sending 800 Defense Department personnel to the border as the number of border crossings is surging. More than 4,000 just yesterday, with more on the way. Drone video shows hundreds on the roof of a train making its way north through Mexico. Well, those migrants are part of an unbroken train stretching all the way back to South America. The impact of thousands of people making the trek north is taking a huge toll on the communities through which they pass. Chuck Holton brings us the story from the Darien Gap.
What was once one of the most remote and pristine jungles on planet Earth is now an environmental disaster. Trash litters the banks of the river locals once depended on for their water. Now, the bitter irony is that in a place which gets a dozen feet of rain each year, these indigenous tribes have to import bottled water.
So it's about 8 o'clock in the morning on the Rio Turquesa going into the Darien Gap, and we're starting to pass dozens and dozens of these boats coming out completely full of migrants. You see all these migrants here behind me. They're from all over the world, and they're all headed out to the river end where the road is. The problem is there are not enough boats to get them out of here and get them down to the road where they can continue their journey to the United States.
3 hours upriver, we come to the last village before reaching the Colombian border. The scene is apocalyptic. Thousands of migrants arrive each day, more than 6 times the village's original population. There's nowhere to sleep and no adequate facilities for the crush of humanity dragging in after 6 days in the jungle. People line up to register for the boat ride out, standing for hours under the merciless sun. Although many suffer from heat stroke, the tiny clinic has almost nothing to offer.
Yeah, we're here 5 minutes and there's people passing out left and right. The sun came out, it's super hot. They don't have many resources here to help. This is really what they need. They need resources. These guys, they need volunteers, they need supplies. With thousands of people coming in here every day, there's just no way that they can take care of all the people that are coming in with needs, because by this time they've already been walking through the jungle for 5 or 6 days. And so they get here, they're all half dead. Some of them are mostly dead. And like this one right here, just dehydrated, passed out in the sun, and they really need time to recover before they continue their journey.
And many are dying in the jungle.
People who was passing the river, they could just see the dead bodies in front of them. And me and my friends, we just go and we just covered them with some plastics because we didn't want some wild animals to eat them or something. And also there were some children and also some families, they were passing from that path. We didn't want them to see the dead bodies. And it was extremely, extremely dangerous way.
Now, the tribe has reached a breaking point. They've decided to build a separate camp for the migrants across the river, one that will hold up to 15,000 people.
We've decided that it has to be a shelter away from the community, which should give migrants their own place for food and shelter, as this has affected every aspect of our lives, including social, economic, cultural, and even education.
Right now, they are defecating in the same streets where they are sleeping. Nobody wants that. We want everything to be well organized and in order, so that the migrants feel better when they come to the community.
This year, the number of people traversing the gap en route to the United States has exceeded 350,000, which is already 100,000 more than 2022. And despite the toll in human misery, the numbers just keep rising. From Panama, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
A much-needed report. Thank you, Chuck. Gordon, those scenes are just devastating and overwhelming, and it just shows the desperation on so many people.
Well, it shows the desperation, but it also shows that they have hope. And what other country has a dream? In America, we actually joke about it. I'm trying to achieve the American dream. Is there an Afghanistan dream? You know, when you look at the migrants coming in, they're coming to us because they perceive that they can have hope here. But what I don't understand, and I've said it before, I'm going to continue saying it until we can get some kind of movement on it, where is our government in this? Is there not comprehensive immigration policies that clearly spell it out as to what is going to happen to you if you show up at the border? Right now, the message that they're getting is, okay, if you get arrested, it's no big deal. You're going to get released and even sent up to Chicago. So, it's the wrong message to send, and that's the reason you're seeing this flood of immigration, because they have the hope, they have the promise, they want the dream that we all have. They want that, and they're coming in absolute droves. And it's curious to me to see that there's really not effective news coverage on this issue. Just the other day, the administration comes out with some kind of plan for 300,000 Venezuelans to actually get employed here. And they tout that as some big policy change, and the administration trying to solve the migration problem. Well, 300,000 against 3.5 million is not solving anything. You're just throwing a pebble in the pond. How do we come to comprehensive immigration policy? This shouldn't be a Republican issue. It shouldn't be a Democrat issue. This should be a United States of America issue. How do we solve this? And how do we send a message to folks? Here's the proper process to follow. If you don't follow that, you're not getting in. Terry?
Boy, the pictures are devastating. You know, before that, it's numbers, and you're appalled by the numbers. But then when you see that,
you see the people,
oh my word,
your heart goes out to them.
The suffering.